Hello, and welcome to the Shea Hates Everything podcast, where two brothers argue about video games and other shit that matters. My name is Shea, and today I hate really long podcasts when we said we weren't going to do a really long podcast.
And my name's Kyle, and today I hate feeling and looking like a hobo. It had been months since I got my hair cut. I finally got my hair cut today, so I don't feel or look like a hobo anymore, but boy howdy, the past couple weeks, I've been looking rough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Also, I've been sick for 2 weeks, so that didn't help.
Yeah, you're rocking a little bit of the Barry White, even more so than usual right now, which is understandable. We're delaying the recording of this podcast until the absolute last second.
Yeah.
Because Kyle has been like without a voice for a week. But yeah, I can also commiserate with you on the hobo-ish thing. Working from home is already like makes me lean more heavily into that vibe.
Sure.
And I'll say that months of being unemployed make me lean even more heavily into that vibe. So I'm right there with you. I did get a haircut like 3 weeks ago. I went to a cheaper place to try to save some money, and she fucked me up real good. So I won't be going back. And now I need to find another place to get a haircut. So I don't know what I'm going to do. Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to do. Huh. Kelly cut my hair during COVID, and so I think we might just go back to that. She bought a pair of like legit clippers because we were like, we can spend $90 on clippers, but over the course of a year, it's going to save us money.
Right.
So we've got nice clippers.
Okay.
So I think I might ask her. It takes like 3 hours for her to cut my hair, and so that is not as much fun.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
She'll bring her time down the more she does it, I'm sure.
Sure, yes, but it's been like 2 years since she has done it.
Okay.
So
that's not
the
great.
The skills are gone.
Right.
Also, she hasn't agreed to this yet. So maybe next time we'll do a video podcast and listeners can see what my hair looks like after my wife cuts it. But that's not what we're doing today. Today, we are doing a part 2 of our 2024 Game of the Year Superlatives episodes. Last episode, we talked through our favorite moments, our favorite moments, our least favorite mechanics,
yes,
our favorite characters, and the okayest games of 2024. So check that episode out if you have not already. Today, we are going to be talking about the best old games. So these are games we played in 2024 that came out prior to 2024.
Right.
We're going to be talking best writing, which is as broad as it sounds. It's just writing. It's not best story, best plot, best narrative. It's everything that is written in a game. We're going to be talking best music. And so we're going to do Kyle is going to do some editing wizardry to try to make y'all able to listen to the music while we are listening to the music. And it's going to work seamlessly.
Oh, it'll be flawless.
And then we're going to wrap up this episode by talking about the worst characters, because we got to end on a down note, but hopefully a funny one. So that's sort of what we're doing today. What do you say we dive right in and talk about the best old games
of
ready. 2024?
I got my scuba suit on. I got my oxygen tank filled. I'm ready to dive.
Hell yeah, bro. I have my armor and my guns and my tunage blaring. I'm ready to hell dive in.
Oh, wow.
See what I did there?
I do. Nice job.
Yeah. Helldivers is not one of the best old games. It's one of the best new games.
Sure.
But we have some really good old games. I think a good one, we'll talk through alphabetically for the games that we played, but I feel like it's a really fitting way to start. With Kyle, this past year, you played through every James Bond video game, or I should say since the PS2 era.
Well, no, since GoldenEye on the N64. That's what I started with.
That's right. Yes. The OG N64 GoldenEye. You played through all of those James Bond games. It was like, how many was it in total?
13 or 14, including 007 Racing on the PlayStation 1, which was unfortunate. Which was
not good. So there aren't 13 or 14 of the James Bond games that are in the best old game category, but there is one.
I picked the best one, which is 007 Nightfire on the PlayStation 2. That's the version that I own and played. Just like going back to it, it was like after having come from Okay, so I have fond memories of GoldenEye, and I went back and played it, and it just didn't hit for me. Like, the controls were too archaic, the mission structure was, like, really Like, they did give you very much direction. It felt like very much I'd have to do a lot of trial and error and just like spending a lot of extra time searching around levels to find objectives. It just really didn't hit for me. And then, there was like a weird third person one and a couple of the first person ones, but Nightfire really felt like, since GoldenEye, like making good on the promise of GoldenEye initially.
Yeah.
Nightfire was just absolutely fantastic. It was incredible when it came out, and I maintain that it still holds up to this day, having played it, not having played it for like over a decade and playing it again this year. Boy, it really held up, especially put in contrast with the other James Bond games that came before and after it. Nightfire is just absolutely best in class for James Bond games. So it's just terrific playing through that this year.
And especially for like GoldenEye, which I feel probably most people would say is their favorite of the James Bond games, certainly the most popular of the James Bond games. But having replayed that one, like, you really felt like the single player did not hold up over time. And so Nightfire was kind of like the best possible version of what GoldenEye was trying to do.
Right.
So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I have Cyberpunk 2077 on this list, because I was late to the party with Phantom Liberty. And so I put like 20 to 30 hours into Cyberpunk in the first couple of months of the year, really catching up on Phantom Liberty and also just doing a bunch of other fucking missions.
Right.
I originally intended, like, I'm just going to replay this whole game. It's amazing. It's one of my favorite games ever made now that it actually works. I eventually kind of petered out just because there was so much actual new stuff to play. But playing Phantom Liberty, diving back into Night City, doing all the cool stuff, playing a different kind of character, making different choices was really fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a game that I still think, like, just the other day I was like, I might want to go back to Cyberpunk again. So that I think is going to be a game that I put in my rotation of every couple of years I'm going to play it. Right up there with, Skyrim, Final Fantasy X, like among my favorite games of all time, right? So I think this one sits right up along there with those.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, just like to look at when it came out, how much of a mess it was, and then looking at it today, like how much fun I had going back and playing through it, and obviously like playing the DLC stuff, like how that integrated with and expanded upon the base game. Like they really, I mean, it's like, could be argued that it should have been that way at launch, right? But they finally made good on the promise of it. And not to say like it's a perfect game, it still has its flaws and a lot of limitations, but like I feel like they really found what the game was after it came out, which is kind of a crazy thing to say, but they really found what it was and made good on it. And I think that it deserves its recognition, with caveats, of course, but
yeah, I mean, they came as close to No Man's Sky as they could. Obviously, Cyberpunk was disappointing for a hugely different number of reasons than No Man's Sky was, but the point is, like, they did put in the work to fix it. To your point, it's still not perfect. Even when I played through it the first time, like, I still had a lot of bugs and glitches. Right. Nothing game-breaking, though, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, all of the free updates that they've done since then, the 2.0 update, which is when I jumped back into it to play Phantom Liberty. Obviously, Phantom Liberty was a paid expansion, but it was absolutely incredible content. Yeah. Just the writing and the characters, the new zone, all the new additions and things, the way they changed all the perk tree stuff in 2.0. So it's like certainly well worth going back to. Even as someone that got everything I could out of it the first time just a couple of years ago, I still felt like I was having a very fresh experience in a lot of ways.
Totally.
So, props.
The next one is Dino Crisis. I played through the first Dino Crisis for the very first time this year. I've never played a Dino Crisis game, even though it's like 100% up my alley. I've never even like seen someone play through Dino Crisis, so it was like a huge surprise for me. I don't know how this one missed me or I missed it for so long, but I am just head over heels with the Dino Crisis franchise at this point. Like, I know there are only 3 games, and the third one people don't look upon favorably. I have Dino Crisis 2. I intend to play it sometime within the next year, hopefully. I just have so many other games I'm playing right now, but playing through that first one, it really, like, I thought the writing was really great. It's very it emulates that Hollywood blockbuster film writing very well, that 80s action film writing.
Yep.
It does that really well. It has some interesting survival horror mechanics around the ammo management system, because like you have to decide whether or not you're going to spend your ammo killing a dinosaur, or you're going to use your crafting stuff to like put it to sleep temporarily and like get past it to then possibly have to face it later. So like that introduces like a few different kind of wrinkles in the general survival horror formula. But I also thought like the pacing was really good. You get to learn the areas, get to be familiar with them really well. It has a few different endings based upon, some choices that you're making throughout the game, which makes replayability interesting. And I was very, very impressed with the whole package. I thought it looked great, had a fantastic soundtrack. Audio design was great. The dinosaurs very menacing, very threatening. I was really, really surprised by it. And like, I know there are pockets of people that talk about Dino Crisis, but it's the kind of thing that feels like it should be talked about as much as Resident Evil. I feel like it's just not, because they went the Resident Evil route instead of the Dino Crisis route. Like we could all be talking about Dino Crisis 9 right now. My favorite game of all time could have been Dino Crisis 4 for the GameCube. Like there's this weird alternate history. I think that first game is just as good as the first Resident Evil in a lot of ways. It's maybe not as sophisticated in its puzzle design. It's a little more straightforward there. But in terms of other production values, writing, voice acting, the musical score, I think it's just as strong, if not better, in those ways. So really, really impressed with Dino Crisis.
Nice. We both played some Dragon Age Origins this year. It was one of our Game Club games in the lead up to Dragon Age Veilguard. I know you only put like a couple hours into it and just kind of ran out of time.
Like 3 or 4 hours.
I played like for a couple of months. I got probably 2/3 of the way through it and then had to put it down just to wrap up some other stuff in 2024.
Right.
But it's a game that I really like. All of the Dragon Age games. I'm so sorry. I really like the first 3 Dragon Age games, even though they are very different, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there are a lot of people that love the old school CRPG kind of thing that Dragon Age Origins is going for, and therefore didn't like Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition as much. But I truly like all of them for their own, like on their own merits. I honestly probably liked the Origins the least of the 3, just because I didn't like the more strategic combat as much.
Okay.
But going back to it, I just have a much more appreciation for the writing and the characterization.
It's so good. And I think, like, immediately, it's so good.
And I think a lot of that is because of how far BioWare has fallen. More on that later when it comes to how they make their characters. And so that's really what I'm getting the most out of with Origins. And I fully intend this year to go back and finish it and play all the way through it. I'm kind of doing a like BioWare retrospective in my own way. I'll talk some more about BioWare in a little bit here. But I just, the way that they wrote those characters, they immediately have a very specific personality and point of view and relationships with the other characters that are in your party. It's just really, really fucking good. And I also think like the combat is fun. I don't think it's anything that sets the world afire, but I do think it is. I'm having a lot of fun with it. So yeah, Dragon Age Origins holds up. IMO. I also played through the entirety of Fallout 3 and most of Fallout New Vegas this year, or I guess this last year. Fallout
That's a lot
3,
of gaming.
I know. I wanted to like... I was on that kick this last year. Like, let me replay these older games that I have not replayed for a very long time. And I think to Fallout 3's detriment in a lot of ways, because I think that game continues to not age as well from a gameplay perspective.
Right.
Like, quality of life stuff, shooting mechanics, I think are all pretty rough.
Yes.
I still think that, the writing is fantastic, the quest design is fantastic, and that I still got a ton out of. I love the sense of place that they establish and the variety of places that they created, but it's a little hard to play. And this is mod free, playing on my Xbox Series X. So that one, like, it's a fantastic game, but I would say I probably had a little less of a good time with it than I was hoping to.
I think that's fair.
On the other hand, New Vegas, I was in love with. I think that it's better from a shooting perspective than Fallout 3. Certainly not, amazing, but definitely better. I also think the writing has much more of a distinct sense of humor that kind of permeates everything that's happening. Like, there's just a little more goofiness in New Vegas.
Yeah,
I do
sure.
think the world design is far less interesting in New Vegas than in Fallout 3. But to be fair, I fell off of New Vegas prior to actually getting to New Vegas, and that is like kind of the hub of very cool, visuals and characters and a lot of interactions that you have.
Yeah, that's
so
kind of one of
I
the
know that
big
it gets
problems
better, but
with New Vegas is that it takes a
depending
on what you do, right? How you do it, it takes a long time to get there, and that is one of the most interesting places in the game.
I don't even know that I agree. Like, in theory, I agree that it depends on how you play, how long it takes you to get there. But I'd be very, very curious to know if there's anyone that got to New Vegas prior to, like, being 15 plus hours into the game.
Right.
Like, that, no one plays Bethesda games mainlining the main plot. Like, no one plays them that way. So
right.
I do think that is a very much a detriment to the game, but I did have more fun with New Vegas than I did Fallout 3, so that's worth something.
Yeah.
And then I also played a little game called Little Gator Game. I played it with my kiddos this past year. It was a recommendation from the dudes over at the Besties podcast. They're all dads, and I think it was Justin McElroy was talking about playing Little Gator Game with his little ones and how much they liked it. It's very much a super simple old school Zelda. Sorry, like not like a 2D Zelda, like an Ocarina of Time. Like, it's fairly open. There are kind of characters sparsed around that give you little side quests. It got very funny, very witty writing, super wholesome story of this brother trying to get his older sister to play with him. She's gone away to college, so she doesn't like to do all the fantasy stuff anymore. So he's like trying to find fun ways to get her engaged and enlisting all of his friends and creating these really cool fantasy stories with like cardboard enemies and stuff. And it's a very wholesome time that I think is well created by folks who love Zelda and know people playing their game have an appreciation for Zelda. So it's like the inspirations are obvious and really well done in a kid's game. And it was some of the most fun I had playing with my kids this past year. And we played a lot of really good games this past year. So Little Gator Game is certainly up there.
Nice. I am in the middle of playing Mega Man Legends for the first time. This is a game I've seen played a couple times and just have loved the aesthetic of it, loved the like Saturday morning cartoon nature of it. Like, I thought the writing was very charming, the visual style, the whole package I was really, really intrigued by. And so I finally got my hands on it this year, on a copy of it, thanks to my buddy Cody. And have started. I'm about halfway through, a little over the halfway mark right now. I absolutely adore this game just as much as I thought I would. And I think a lot of it comes down to that sense of adventure, and like I said, that the aesthetic of a Saturday morning cartoon mixed with the PlayStation 1 geometric graphics. I just like that style's very much my thing. I also like the going into the dungeons and solving puzzles and locking on to bosses, strafing around and shooting them. Like, it's got systems where like you're finding loot and going back to roll in the van, and she'll make new special weapons for you or upgrade parts, and you can go down into town and like hit up the junk shop and upgrade your various parts or your canteen for your like health refills and stuff. Like, it has these light RPG elements in it as well, which kind of like round out the whole experience. And it just has so much heart and soul and personality. I could not help but immediately fall in love with it when I started playing it, even if the controls are a bit archaic. It's a really, really terrific time. And I'm excited that there is a second one that I own that I'm able to play, but boy howdy, we sure could use a third Mega Man Legends. I don't think I'm alone in asking for that. That's for sure. But yeah, Mega Man Legends this year has been terrific.
That's awesome. You know, you've been collecting so many games. So many of them are like either classics or just like older games that you've never played that, you know, a lot of people have an appreciation for. And so that process introducing you to, you know, reintroducing you, whatever, to an old game that is so good is not that it in and of itself makes like the collection worth it, but it's like an added perk, right? Like,
oh yeah,
you aren't just collecting these games to play ones you've never played before, but you also get to play ones that you haven't played before, and that's a really cool part of the collection mentality.
Right. And as I play these old games, I'm also trying to like learn a little bit about the history of when they were made, how they were received at the time, how they've like been you know, released in multiple ways over the years, you know, like how the IP has changed hands and stuff. I'm trying to educate myself on that stuff a little bit on the fringes as well as I go through this stuff, just to like, you know, kind of flesh out my knowledge of the industry in a lot of ways. And also just kind of, especially when it comes to older games, it's just such a different period in video games development that I'd find that really interesting.
Right. 2 Pokemon games, because I play Pokemon all the time. It's something that is really easy to pick up on my Steam Deck or my Switch when I'm hanging with the kids or watching a movie, etc., etc. So this year I played through Fire Red, and I started Emerald. I'm still playing through Emerald, but I think that both of those games... So Fire Red is just probably the best way to play the original games, in my opinion.
I agree.
With some updated graphics, you know, sounds, like a little bit more of the quality of life stuff going on, but it still feels like the classic experience of those games. And then Pokemon Emerald, I like, you know, I liked most, like pretty much every generation I liked less than the one preceding it. So like, I like, you know, Ruby Sapphire Emerald less than I did Gold Silver Crystal, but I still think Hoenn is a really cool environment, a little heavy on like the water in my opinion, but being able to fight both Team Aqua and Team Magma is fun. I've not yet gotten Groudon or Kyogre or Rayquaza, but all 3 of those Pokemon are very, very cool, so that's been fun as well. But I would say like Fire Red was the pinnacle of my Pokemon play this past year. Okay. In 2025, I'm gonna finally play Sun or Moon. I don't know which one yet, but I've never played either of those, so that one I'm really looking forward to this year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know that I like got past the first badge or so in those.
Yeah, I never had a 3DS, so I never played a lot of those. I fell off, like, I think it was Black and White was the last one I bought. So yeah, like the X and Y and Sun and Moon was never experienced those. So I'm excited. I like seeing the new Pokemon. Like I've played Scarlet Violet, I played Sword and Shield, so I've seen a lot of that generation of Pokemon already, but it's still like being in a new place. I just think that's cool. So I'm excited for that.
Nice.
And then last one that I had on this list is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, more BioWare. That actually is kind of what kicked off my BioWare wanting to replay stuff attitude, as I really wanted to do KOTOR 1 and 2 this past year. And I think that this game has not aged super awesomely. Like, I know your buddy Cody played KOTOR like right around the same time or right after I had finished it, and he had never played it before, and he was just like, I am not seeing the appeal. The gameplay is like very rudimentary, and a lot of the writing and voice acting is not super well produced. And I think for its era it was super innovative for those reasons, but now looking back it feels kind of archaic in how it's designed, how the sort of behind the scenes dice rolls happen. Especially like the voice acting is very rushed. I think the writing is fine, it's really more the performances that are the problem, and this game had way more voice acting than a lot of games did at the time, and I think that's sort of a symptom of that. All that being said, I think the world created in this like Old Republic era is really fucking cool. This war between the Sith and the Republic, these like two Sith that are at the top of the food chain, and one of them dies prior to the beginning of the game. The big twist, spoilers for KOTOR, where you find out that you are the main bad guy that everybody has been fighting, was fucking wild when it happened. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of really cool shit to love in KOTOR, and I'm taking a breather before I start KOTOR 2 because they are very similar, and so I didn't want to get burnt out the way I did a little bit with New Vegas. So KOTOR 2 will probably be a late 2025, maybe 2026 replay for me, but I'm very excited about that. Star Wars is my jam.
Yeah.
I miss when every Star Wars project was incredibly exciting. That's not how it is no more. But KOTOR, I think, despite the gameplay maybe not holding up and like as a packaged product maybe not holding up, I have a lot of nostalgia for it, and I think there's a lot of really good shit in there. A lot of great characters also.
Right.
And then this last one's out of order, which I'm realizing.
Oops.
It's probably my fault because I reorganized it to make it alphabetical and must have missed this.
That's okay. I played Killzone. Well, I just recently played Killzone 2, 3, Mercenaries, and I started Shadowfall. I also played Liberation on the PSP, a little bit of that.
Okay.
Killzone 2 is so good.
Good.
I immediately impressed. Like on playing on original PS3 hardware with a DualShock, like what they were able to eke out of that cell processor on the PS3, it's like magic. It looks so good. It really does look like a PlayStation 4 game, except for the fact that it's usually about 25 frames a second, occasionally slightly lower. That's the only kind of real knock I have on it, is the frame rate when there's a lot of enemies and a lot of explosions going on. But it's just, it's paced really well. It's nonstop action. It looks so good. Also, like the realization of the Helgen world and all their tech is really, really interesting and cool. Killzone 2 really captured my heart in a big way this year, playing through it somewhat recently. Had also had a great time with 3. I just think 2 had like an immediate effect on me where I was like, oh, this is like really, really impressive. And like, I think 2 looks better than 3. I think 3, they did some stuff on the back end to prioritize performance a little bit more. So I do think that 2 actually looks a little bit better than 3. It was just super impressive.
I'm sort of the definitive authority on Killzone 2. I was ranked in the top 5% of players in Killzone 2 online. That isn't a joke. I got the trophy for it because
I remember
the day you got it. Yeah, the summer because I wasn't even like trying to get it. It just randomly popped, and I was like, oh shit, I'm playing way too much Killzone 2. The summer that it came out, I was in college, and so that summer I was living at home. I had my own room in the basement, and all I did all summer long was stay up all night, every night, play Killzone 2, watch the entirety of Smallville,
with
read.
Me? I watched Smallville
with you, and I read, no joke, over 300 issues of comics from a friend that I made in college that was a super hardcore comics person, and he just let me borrow like every comic he owned. That was, I'm not being hyperbolic, probably the best summer of my life. And Killzone 2 is a big part of that. So hey, I'll give Killzone 2 all the love.
Nice. That's awesome. But yeah, those are kind of the old games that we wanted to shout out. Which one do you think would be your best old game this year?
Yeah, I think like when I think about which old game that I played is the best video game, it's undeniably Cyberpunk 2077. Okay. But when I think about like what I got the most out of, and sort of in the spirit of this category of it being an actual old game, not a thing that just came out months before I played it, just happened to be in 2023, I'm going to go with KOTOR. Again, I think that it did not age super well, but as a Star Wars project, the universe it creates, the characters that it creates, the story it creates, so fucking cool. That's the game to me that put BioWare on the map in terms of like modern character party building games.
Yeah.
And I have so much love and respect and like gratitude towards that game for creating all those things.
Yeah, for sure. Mine's probably Dino Crisis. I would like to say Mega Man Legends, because that's the one that's like probably of those is the nearest and dearest to my heart. But like Dino Crisis was such a surprise for me. It was just like, how the hell have I not played this before? Like, I'm such a huge Dino Crisis fanatic now. Like, I want another Dino Crisis so bad. It was tremendous, like a huge surprise, and thought it was really, really, really terrific. So I'm gonna give this one to Dino Crisis with an honorable mention to my true love, Mega Man Legends.
I think it's really cool, like, how differently we played old games this year.
Yes,
like, for you playing 007 Nightfire, Dino Crisis, and Mega Man Legends all for the first time, and that being, like, a thing that you wanted to do through different, like, acquisition processes, right? Like,
right. Well, Nightfire I definitely played when it came out, but I have not played since it came out.
That's fair. It's not among your favorites.
Right.
Like, and that's the comparison I was really trying to drive at, which is like the things that I replayed were like old favorites that I have not revisited in a very long time. So it's just a funny, different way that you and I played through a lot of older games this year. It's like, for me, it's the nostalgia, and for you, it's the let me uncover or re-uncover what makes these old games really great that I maybe haven't played since they came out. So I think it's just interesting.
Yeah.
We'll be curious to look back at the end of 2025 and see what old stuff we both played.
Totally.
Let's move on to the best writing of 2024. We've got 7 things on here, so not as many, but I think a lot to talk about with all of these. No surprise, first on the list alphabetically is Alan Wake 2, the Lake House DLC.
Oh, shocker.
I hear that you like Alan Wake 2.
I do a lot. So I already touched on this quite a bit in the best moment category last episode, but Lake House, it does so much to contextualize and expand on the Bureau of Control's presence in Alan Wake 2, and does a lot of really fun things with the fiction around Alan's powers. Talking about, like, so the whole Lake House concept is a Bureau of Control facility on Cauldron Lake in the world of Alan Wake, and they are there to study the fact that Alan's writing can affect reality, and trying to reproduce those effects through various means, like trying to test what it is about his writing. Is it the typewriter? Is it the ink? Is it the style of writing? Is it Alan himself? Are the words important? Is the location important? Intent behind the words, the creative spark, is that necessary? And it does, like, they clearly thought through, like, what a scientific approach to that problem would be, and then built a whole facility and narrative around that. And I just thought it was really, really well done. And again, Remedy did a great job with Alan Wake 2. It felt like a whole complete experience, and everything they've released in it since then, it's just filling in the edges to make it feel like a more well-rounded, well-realized vision. And I think that's exactly how you should do DLC. Nothing critical to understanding, but things that reward those who pay attention. And that's what the Lake House DLC did for me, 100%.
That's awesome. I love that. For as much as you loved Alan Wake 2, that you got more content that still hit those same highs.
Huge.
That's like, not that like I had an expectation that Remedy would drop the ball, but it's still nice when, like, your expectations are met and exceeded.
Right.
So that's great. Yeah. You don't always get that with the DLC, for sure.
Right.
I put Another Crab's Treasure on this list. This is a game that, frankly, I played way more of than I would have if the writing hadn't been as good as it is. I mean, it's a Souls-like for babies, people want to call it. I don't really care. I don't like Souls-like games. This was the right level of difficulty for me that I was looking for. I still just don't enjoy that style of combat and that style of game, so I did bounce off of it.
Okay.
But I put easily half a dozen hours into Another Crab's Treasure, maybe more like 8 hours. And I think it's super funny, very witty. It's got a lot of, like, good sort of toying with the fourth wall kind of style to it. We talked last episode in Best Characters about Pronathan, who's the shark, toy character that steals from you in the beginning of the game. I just think it's got a lot of really lovable lovable is maybe not the right word. Like a lot of very endearing type of characters for the style of game that it is.
Yeah.
The story, is fairly frivolous, but I think that they have a lot of fun with that premise, and I think that it's worth lauding for that.
Yeah. I put Indiana Jones and the Great Circle on here. Holy shit, that game is good.
I'm gonna +1.
Okay.
You may have written it down, but I would +1.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones.
Just holy shit,
that
man.
game is extremely good.
It's just like the way they are able to replicate the sense of adventure from the films is it's incredible. It is like hats off to Machine Games. They did a truly wonderful job.
Hats off, whips down.
Yeah, hats off,
Pam
whips
respect.
down. And just the way they wrote Indy is not entirely consistent with the Indy of the films, but it's Troy Baker's Indy, and it feels right with the way that he performs it. I think like Indy emotes a little bit more and has more to say, and part of that is a gameplay thing, right? Like you don't want a silent protagonist, and Indy isn't the most talkative character in the films, and so there's just like a lot more banter and like comments to himself and stuff, but like
they're still very like he's still very smarmy and sarcastic the way Indy is, but you're right, he does emote more and he does like vocalize more than Indy does in the movies. You're right. I think that for me, I really enjoy the first 3 Indiana Jones movies. Indy isn't like, it's not among my favorite film series, so I don't have as much of a personal attachment as you probably do.
Sure.
So it didn't read that way to me. Like when you say it makes sense, but as I'm playing it, I'm not thinking about that because of how well they're nailing the tone of his writing and the writing of the other characters, and frankly like the tone of the villains and how those interactions are. I think that all of that stuff is like super on point.
Yes, 100%. And honestly, like I didn't really pick up on the Troy Baker thing until I was done with the game, because like when you're in it, you're wholly in it. And just when like thinking back about it retrospectively, I'm like, oh yeah, there were some differences here and there about his portrayal as a character, and I thought like clearly all of that stuff really, really worked for me, because it goes hand in hand with Troy's performance as well. I think they're just giving him a little bit more, and I think that totally makes sense in this context. And it was not like I felt a betrayal or whatever. I think it was a net positive for me. But yeah, even just broader strokes, the overall narrative and the adventure that you go on, the globe-trotting nature of it, the mysteries that you're uncovering, the little hints that you're discovering around the side and the side stories and the fringes of the events that are going on in the world. All of that stuff is so enjoyable, and I was just 100% along for the ride the entire time. I enjoyed that game tremendously. Yeah, I'm right there with you. And a lot of that enjoyment was derived from these like huge moments that were culminated directly from the writing and the characters. Yep. Yeah, it's got a lot of like high tension, but also low tension, because that's kind of the Indiana Jones style. Right. It's got a lot of those like high tension, low tension, dramatic moments, like of when things come to a head, confrontations happen. That stuff feels very, like I said, like it's tense and also kind of goofy. Yeah. And that's a hard line to toe generally, but it's an exceptionally hard line to toe when you're also trying to imitate stuff that exists. And that, like, in my opinion, as someone who loves but isn't obsessed with Indiana Jones, I think is like super, they nailed that part of it. So, yeah. Next 2 on here are all you. Oh, that's true. All right. Oh, my poor throat. Rise of the Golden Idol. This is a tricky one because with the nature of the game being sort of this, this puzzly detective, investigative video game, the writing has to be very specific so as not to, give things away preemptively or to take the sense of discovery away from the player. And so a lot of things are, when I talk about writing in Rise of the Golden Idol, it's more about the crafting of the player experience and what they intentionally leave out, and the writing in terms of how they are crafting the scenarios, how they're writing the scenarios, and the specific moments in time to insert the player into them to maximize on that feeling of sleuthing and investigation. I think all of that stuff is masterfully done. They did it fantastically in Case of the Golden Idol. I think they're even better at it. You know, they have further refined their ability to do that in Rise of the Golden Idol. And I also think that the realization at the end and the way that it comes full circle back around to the beginning, and how that sends kind of shockwaves of contextualization throughout the entire thing that you've played. I thought that worked just as well in this one as it did in Case of the Golden Idol, because they are two slightly different ways in which they went about it, and the concepts are two slightly different things. So, Rise of the Golden Idol, it seems like writing a game in that respect would be extremely difficult. I am
sure.
It's one of those things
to do it a second time also seems extremely difficult.
Yeah, it's like they climbed this mountain and then they're like, oh, see that higher mountain? We're actually going up there this time.
Yeah.
And it's like, good Lord, like, good for you. I could not. And so therefore, hats off to them, because they're doing a lot of shit that I could never do. They're thinking about stuff on another level that I can't. They have a handle on their craft in a way that I do not. Still Wakes the Deep. I wanted to shout this one out. It's not as strong of a case as maybe the last couple, but I think Still Wakes the Deep has some of the most natural writing and voice performances of a game that I played this year. It like in no way does it ever feel performative. It feels very real, very grounded. And I especially liked, because it takes place in, I believe, Scotland on an oil rig off the coast. And though they're using a lot of terminology, and the accents can be very heavy. And so with the subtitles, they'll give you the translation of the things they're saying. So like, for example, like a character will be like, oh, that's beyond your ken. And like the subtitle will be like, that's beyond your understanding. And so it's not like a direct one-to-one subtitle. So like they're doing some of that translation for the player, but still keeping to the authenticity by having the actors and the writing, portray that that vernacular correctly. And I think like from a story-wide perspective, it's a pretty rote, kind of by the numbers, science fiction-y, horror-y story. I think it's more about the individual characters and the kind of the moment-to-moment dialogue that was really, really impressive to me, and that that's where their competency really shone through. And I just wanted to shout it out for that specifically, because I feel like this is a game not a lot of people played. And I do think there are a lot of really interesting while some of it is a little boilerplate, there are some interesting elements that set it far ahead of the pack of other games that are like these kind of narrative driven horror science fiction experiences. There are a lot of them, and they vary in quality. This is one of the best of those. And a lot of that has to do with sort of the moment to moment characterization and the voice performances and the writing.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that it's a scary game, so I'm not gonna play it. Yeah, because it's the idea behind it sounds really cool, and even like the whatever monster behind what's going on also sounds very interesting.
Yeah, and like there are moments like they do things that like there are moments of like real beauty to it as well. Like it's not all horror. And they do some really smart things in this. I mean, I guess this technically falls under writing, but they do some really smart things where, I think some of the best horror is more unsettling than just, traditional jump scare stuff. And they do really interesting things where they will blend that beauty and the subtle twinge, like the subtle turning of the dial towards the horror. And I think that that amps up the tension quite a bit and makes that effect more dramatic when you do it that way versus going from 1 to 11 immediately.
Right.
And so that slow turning of the dial, I think they do really well. And there are a lot of like kind of roller coaster moments where they're really prescriptive about when to ratchet it up and when to ratchet it back, and going kind of back and forth between the beauty and the horror and the organic nature of things. There's a good ebb and flow to the game, I will say, which again I think sets it apart. And I guess that does have the pacing and the content there also I think falls under the realm of writing, so I think that's relevant.
Yeah. I put Tales of Kenzera Zhao on here.
Yeah.
I think this game has some really good emotional stuff, some really good character development throughout the game. I think I talked about this last episode because Zhao was on my like best characters list. He, I think, goes through a huge arc in really dealing with like the death of his father and trying to, take on the mantle as sort of a shaman for his people. He really learns a lot about what that means to be a leader and like how you should lead, how you should be more empathetic with the other humans sort of under your care and through the other tribes, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think he goes on like a really interesting journey as a character and really dealing with this sense of loss. But I think the biggest thing is like, this game is not afraid to let its characters and by extension the player really sit in those like down emotional moments.
Okay.
Like Zhao has sort of his I don't remember if it's like his mentor or his dad's mentor, who is another shaman who has died, sort of is in his mind or appears to him in sort of a ghostly fashion and sort of is like talking him through a lot of what's happening in the story and sort of helping him deal, and just is the character that he interacts with a lot. And they have a lot of like their conversations that kind of like settle with Zhao being like really sad or really angry or frustrated about something that's happening or something his dad did or said or just the way the state of the world. And a lot of like the mentor character's response to that is like, yeah, that's kind of how it goes. And they just kind of like let you sit with that. Zhao is very, he's a teenager and they don't treat him with kid gloves. Like the characters in the game don't treat him with kid gloves. They like treat him like an adult who's really growing up throughout the course of the game. And I just think it's just really well handled, very naturally handled in a game that is steeped in mythology and magic and, deities and all this crazy shit that's happening. I mean, you have like superpowers that are given to you by the gods, but the human stuff feels exceptionally human. And I think that a lot of that comes from, I don't remember the guy's name, the actor that started the studio really to make this game. Like, and I mean, he wrote the game himself. He voices Zhao in the game. And I think a lot of it comes from his sensibilities. And I was just really impressed by the quality of the writing. It's one of those that like it goes way beyond being good video game writing and just being really good character writing. And it's stuff that even today we still don't see that much of. Stuff like The Last of Us, like things that transcend the medium into being just an exceptionally well told story. I really feel like Tales of Kenzera Zhao like sits up there in terms of the character stuff. The plot isn't as interesting as The Last of Us, certainly. The characters aren't as well developed. It's a very different kind of game. But yeah, I think the writing is super good in this one. And then last on the list, I'll take to help your voice, but I know you would agree, is Thank Goodness You're Here. Funniest game I played this year by a large margin. The sort of British sensibilities aren't always my thing, but I think are really well done in this. It's very kooky, it's very referential, it's very dry, and I think all of that works very well with the gameplay.
Yeah, I would say
like there's less like writing in terms of like dialogue that's happening in this game. It's more about like the moments and the comedic beats.
Yeah.
But they're all very specifically crafted. And to me, like that fits, like
they wrote
fits into
situational
writing.
comedy. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good way of describing it. And comedy is, as we know, so hard to do in games.
Yeah.
And I think they find a good balance between having comedy that the player creates, in that like I can slap anything I want and that's goofy, but also having very specific moments of comedy in the way that like other characters interact with you, or the actual written dialogue, things that are happening in the background of a scene. I think they find a really good mix, and it helps keep the comedy super fresh at the game.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Cool.
It's super good.
So what's your favorite? What was your favorite of this year?
Gosh, I wonder. Alan Wake 2, the Lake House DLC. Honestly, like that was like it has to be that, but you know, just want to remind people of all the amazing things that I said about all the other games too, because like this was I mean, those titles alone, this was a really strong year for writing in games. I felt like, now there were a lot of misses too, but there are a lot of really positive examples of people elevating whatever form that they are executing on. For me, it's Alan Wake 2, but so many good ones.
Yeah, I think it is interesting because I agree with you. There's a lot of games on here that are really, really well written, but I find it interesting that there are fewer of them where like we would say the narrative is exceptionally good. Like I know the narrative of Lake House hit that for you. Certainly Indiana Jones, less so Still Wakes the Deep or Tales of Kenzera Zao.
Right.
Like a lot of the writing is more about like a lot of the good character stuff, good, moments that happen throughout the game, good tone, less actual like hardcore narrative, which I feel like is different than a lot of years. I feel like
that's true.
There are fewer good stories this year.
Yeah.
I just think that that's interesting. I'm going to go with Indiana Jones. I said lots of really good stuff about Tales of Kenzera Zao, but I think kind of to that point on creating a like plot that is interesting and engaging the entire way through, a narrative that is really dynamic and surprising, while also matching a tone that already exists, and it fitting completely seamlessly into that. That it kind of takes it over the top for me.
Yeah.
I would echo what you say. Like, Tales of Kenzera, Thank Goodness You're Here are both also like really, really well written in my opinion.
Yeah.
Cool. How about we do best music?
Best music?
Like I said, we're gonna do some wizardry here. So hopefully this all goes okay, and if it doesn't, you probably won't notice because we'll edit around it. But we basically have a list of games, a couple of tracks for each game. We kind of have them timed out to be like 30 seconds, maybe a little bit less, in hopes of avoiding copyright stuff. But like, it's hard to talk about game music without you guys hearing the songs we're referencing, because that's stupid. So we're just going to see what happens.
Yeah.
It's
rolling
our
the dice.
podcast isn't monetized. Don't sue us, please. God. So first on the list alphabetically is Astrobot. How about you just play the main theme? I don't think I need to set this one up.
You got it. Dude, just dancing in my seat, bro.
Yeah, me
so
too.
Good.
Like, it's a shame that this isn't a video because you would have seen both of us dancing. I mean, I am Astrobot. You are Astrobot. We are all Astrobot.
He, she, we, Wumbo.
He, she, we, Astrobot. Yeah, I think the sense of joy that the theme song creates, it's like my kids were constantly asking, can we play Astrobot? Or really my son, can we play a robot game? Can we play the robot game? And booting it up and hearing that as like all the characters are hanging onto the controller in the main theme, or the main title screen, is pure joy and fantastic. Two other songs we wanted to call out specifically from Astrobot. The first being sort of the background music that plays when you go to the crash site, which is I guess you call it like home base.
Sort of hub world home base.
Yeah, you're collecting all of the Astrobots back at this base and, finding all of them, and they get to come back and hang out. You get to interact with all of them. They all have cool little animations that happen and a couple of different side areas. But this is sort of the like hub world, to your point, Kyle, theme song.
Yeah. Oh man, when the whistles start, I can't help it. I can't help it.
Really,
it's so good.
For me, it's the dum digga dum digga dum digga, like when the guitar really kicks in. I mean, it's got that like it feels very old school platformer with the like Western sort of flair to it, which makes sense. You're in this big like sandy environment. Yeah, it's just got that. It's just a good track to be in the background as you're kind of wandering around, and because it's not like you're not in a level where you're doing a bunch of platforming and fighting enemies and there's not a bunch of drama. You're kind of just like hanging out, and I feel like it captures a good vibe for hanging out with the other bots.
Well, I like it because like it's a driving kind of song, like a movement, like keep things rolling, and so there's like this sense of like, I'm here to like explore, get stuff done, take a look at all the things that I've done, but also I got to get back out there and play some more levels.
There's more bots out there I gotta save.
Exactly.
I need to bring them back here so they can listen to this banger track. You know?
That's right.
All right, and then last one from Astrobot I think is captures the goofiness of this game, and folks that remember our best moment conversation from the last podcast will probably recognize this one too. I ain't no pig, I ain't no vine, there's no flower got roots like mine. I ain't no bush, I ain't no sprout, I ain't no weed, so there is no doubt. But I'm a pepper tree, I'm a pepper tree, yes I'm a pepper tree, the fine greenery. I'm a pepper tree, I'm the pepper tree, and I thank y'all for feeding me. Now jump up into my mouth, jump up into my mouth, oh won't you jump up into my mouth, jump up into my mouth.
Jump up into my mouth. Jump up into
his mouth. He's the Papa Tree. Like, there's nothing better. So this is the moment where you are sort of like revitalizing nature on the levels, and you're shooting water and sort of growing the plants and the trees, including Papa Tree. It awakens him. He sings to encourage you, and he's just like singing about what it's like to be a Papa Tree, and it's pretty legit.
It's so good.
But yeah, I think, every song in Astrobot is amazing. These are just like a couple, but they create this really amazing sense of just like fun and joy and encourage exploration. You want to hang around and listen to the fun songs and dance along as you're playing, which is really what you're looking for in a kind of level-based platformer like this. So,
totally.
Huge props to Astrobot.
Yes. Next game I'd like to nominate for best music is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. A few tracks here. Look, Shea and I are on record as to our feelings about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, how disappointing or not great it may have been in a lot of areas. The music is phenomenal. It is so fucking good. And so I have a few examples of things that I really like. Some weird shit. But also like some good nostalgic vibes, kind of remixed, and then do some Queen's Blood theme there at the end. So this first one is a fun one. It's just such a strange. It's the Chocobo hip hop. I mean,
what else can you say?
What a weird fucking thing, dude. It's so bizarre and strange.
I mean,
and it's like it's out of nowhere too, and it's like also like one of the first things you encounter in the open world. Like you're running around doing stuff for like 20 minutes, and then you come upon the Chocobo Ranch, and you got to go find a Chocobo, and then this fucking song plays, and it in some ways it's disingenuous about what the rest of the game experience is going to be like,
because it sounds fun.
Because it's actually fun and interesting. But it was a very memorable moment, especially because it was early on. It's like kind of this introduction to this goofy series of shenanigans you're going to get into with all these Chocobos along the way.
Yep.
Next, I have the Zack and Aerith theme from when Zack is at Aerith's home, hanging out, doing his thing. And this is like a nice callback to like classic Final Fantasy, just with a more orchestral arrangement. Man, how do you not get goosebumps listening to that?
Yeah. I like
so much
as soon as
emotion.
that started playing and the kind of like main piano melody started, I was like, I should play some Final Fantasy VII. That is another game that I started in 2024 and bounced off pretty early on because that game is very ugly these days.
Yeah, the OG Final Fantasy VII. It's a tough one to go back to.
Very ugly. Yeah,
it needs
a lot of.
There needs to be some other version of it that is still turn-based but looks nice.
I agree.
All right, the last one for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. As I mentioned, I wanted to throw up the Queen's Blood theme because this is a song that I listened to a whole lot while I was playing the game, and it's a bop. I love how playful it is.
Yeah, it's quite good.
Yeah, it's got a great tempo that keeps you engaged. Like you're just playing a card game, but it's got a great tempo. Yep. It's playful. It's fun. And it's just like, yeah, you know what? I could go for another round of Queen's Blood as long as this song's playing.
And like a good loop. I mean, you don't get it in like a 30-second clip, but I mean, the matches can take minutes and minutes, and it loops around very satisfyingly too. So
yes, for sure,
it's a good one.
So that's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That's just a few songs of the many incredible songs on the soundtrack. Definitely something worth celebrating when that game has a lot of things that maybe aren't worth celebrating.
And like I would say Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is also a good nominee for like most music, because if you try to go listen to like the soundtrack
it's
of
insane.
that, it's hours and hours and hours long.
Crazy. All right, next up is I'm nominating Harold Halibut. This is a game that's not getting any love in any other categories. I do think like if we had a best style category, this would certainly, be a shoe-in for that. But it was very middling to average in a lot of respects. But something about the tone, the vibes, in the way that the music brings it all together really hit home with me while I was playing it, even if a lot of like the writing and the moment-to-moment stuff didn't. So I'd like to just start with like the opening theme, just as a way to kind of get us into it. Man, that piano's got that modulator dialed all the way up, baby. Just the way I like
that a lot.
Yeah.
I have not heard much of the Harold Halibut stuff. It's I think the only game on this list that I've not really heard any of the music. I really liked that opening theme song.
Genuinely
very good vibes.
Yeah, it eventually goes. I wonder. I think one of these I picked is somewhere along in this vein, but later on it gets into like this weird, like Euro 70s post-funk. It's very strange stuff, but like German. Yeah. It is so very weird and strange. But here's the next one, An Ocean in a Nutshell. This one's another great example of like kind of this ethereal but also full of heart and kind of like tempered emotion almost, which is kind of a good. Frank, I think tempered emotion is probably a good read on a lot of Halibut stuff. It's like more subdued.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Right when it was building. Kyle, why'd you pick those 30 seconds? I don't know. Yeah.
I liked it, though.
Yeah, it's just a great melancholy vibe. But not entirely melancholy, because like there's still notes of hope in there, but then it kind of dabbles with some minor chords for some mystery, like a little bit of like almost tension but not quite tension. I think like they do a lot of stuff like that in the soundtrack. I think it's really good. I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember this last one. I think I picked this last one as more of a representation of where the music goes in sort of that weird direction I mentioned before. This next one's Memories in Monochrome is what it's called. Yeah. Hell yeah,
Hell
dude.
yeah, dude.
Hell yeah, dude.
That's like early 80s corporate training video.
Totally.
Like I'm super into that vibe of that. Yeah, I'm so bummed. I know you didn't love a lot of like the story parts of Halibut, but man, I'm really bummed that I never went and checked that out, because the sort of vibe that the music is creating, I am like very, very much into.
Yeah.
I need to find I think they took it off of Game Pass, so I need to find a way to play that at some point.
What's that show where like they work in that cubicle in that office and it's very strange? Like it's like the Good Company or not the Good Place. Is it the Good Place? Like they work for this weird corporation, and it's like very Big Brother-y. It's like sort of a pseudo dark comedy.
I don't know. It's not good. It's not the Good Place.
No, okay. Yeah, but it's Harold Halibut has a lot of those same kind of like corporate Big Brother.
Are you talking about like a
themes.
show that's on right now?
Yeah, like it got another season.
Severance.
Thank you. That's it.
I've not seen it, but I think that's.
It's like it gives me like some British Severance vibes.
Yep, I can see that.
The game. And like something about that 70s, that funk to me, along with like the really synth heavy, high modulation, very like subterranean nautical. It's just like a really interesting, unique blend of sounds. And then towards the end there, it gets to be more of that, like, there's like I think it's a German group that put those later songs together, where it gets a little more funky, but it's also like a little more mechanical. It's just a really, really interesting soundtrack for a very interesting game.
Love it. All right, I'm not even going to introduce this next game, because we're going to roll the first track and y'all are going to know what it is. So hit it.
Where are we dropping, bro?
Yeah, dude. Like, theme song of the year, theme song of the decade, song of a generation.
That's so good.
Of the millennium. I don't care how many years you put in it. Helldivers 2 wins. Like, the build and the drop and the da 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 da. It's so fucking good. It hypes you up so much. I don't like it. Literally does not matter how many. I have heard that drop maybe 1,000 times now.
The drop while you drop.
I don't care. I don't care. Like it's incredible every single time. I wanna raise my fist in my Helldivers salute. So fucking good. Two other ones to call out for Helldivers 2. First being the sort of a lot of the music that plays while extraction is happening and shit is getting very crazy.
Oh, man.
For democracy!
I can just picture it at like 2 mechs on the point, a couple auto cannons. You're calling in the supply pod directly on the pickup
3
point.
bile titans bearing down on you. You know, you're calling in every airstrike you've got. They're blowing up your auto turrets. So fucking good. I also love that track is called No Diver Left Behind.
Very good.
And I have to say,
very often left behind.
we will leave every single diver
behind
if we have to.
That's right.
The as long as I have the samples, you can kill everyone else on my team. I do not care. And then I wanted to call out the new Illuminate music. This is, I guess it's not technically a cheat because this content drop did happen in 2024, but it was very much at the end of the year. But I think a lot of the Illuminate stuff is super cool and feels very different, feels way more future, way more sci-fi than a lot of the more like bombastic action movie stuff of the other two factions.
I like the kind of some of the Egyptian notes with the string. I forget what kind of instrument that is.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a viola or what it is, but yeah, I think the strings add a lot. And yeah, like you said, the melody, it feels like very sort of mystical. There's a lot of like tension and uncertainty and sort of like how they have that like kind of just like going on in the background. It like heightens up the tension, and it makes sense because the Illuminate faction is in a lot of ways like kind of like a zombies faction. I mean, the basic enemies are essentially just zombie hordes that just bum rush you with numbers. And so as you're running around these urban streets, which is another new map type for the Illuminate, as you're running around the urban streets, there's a lot of like emptiness, and there's a bunch of smoke and fog and mist around, and you just turn a corner and see a giant horde, and that's when shit pops off. So it creates a lot of that natural tension that I think the music really heightens for the Illuminate stuff. So yeah, like not only does Helldivers 2 have just a very catchy main theme song, I think the stuff even when you're playing the game really adds to the tone and the style and the bombast of what you're doing.
Totally.
So I think it's more than just a cup of liberty, right? I think a lot of the music really rules. Next on the list, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. This is some really good Indiana Jones shit. I think we can start with just the main theme song from The Great Circle, which has a lot of, nods to the OG indie themes, but also feels sort of distinct. Yeah, so it's got kind of the I don't know if it's in like a sort of a religious angle with the choir and a really good build and sort of the
many
tension
good
there.
individual swells that continue to build upon each other. That's really good stuff.
Yep. And then the next one I think is sort of a quick amalgamation of a lot of like random hits and stuff that you hear throughout the game in the different zones that you're in. A good like sort of catch-all of some of the big stuff. Great.
Unmistakably Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I mean the big timpani moments,
totally.
Dun, 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 dun. And it's got a lot of like the low brass stuff that you hear at the end, and you know, much like the actual theme song, a lot of like individual swells and like quick hits and stuff. It's like you said, it's distinctively Indiana Jones and very impressive for that fact.
Totally, they nail it completely, I think.
Yeah.
All right, the next game we're going to talk about is Mullet MadJack. Now, this is a game I only played the Steam Next Fest demo for, but the music was really memorable. I thought it was fantastic. This is a game that is like, it has a little bit of Hotline Miami energy to it, but like it's a first-person shooter, very 80s coded, like retro future 80s, and the shtick is you need, every time you kill a person, you get to live for a few more seconds. And you're on this mission to like save a woman who's been kidnapped. And so you have to like, keep killing enemies to get through these levels and to keep your heart from stopping or whatever it is. And so it's got like a lot of great movement, very retro 80s soundtrack stuff. And the first track we're going to listen to is called Homecoming. I want to go for a jog. Like a total 80s workout video.
Yeah, it's good.
Really,
you know,
really
I'm
good.
a sucker for the synth wavy stuff, and it definitely hits. Like it, having even not played the game, it's the kind of stuff that I would listen to while I'm working. So
yes,
definitely my vibe.
All right, this next one's called High Priority Retro. That one I think is really fun because it just feels like it's ripped straight out of a video game from that era.
That's very interesting. Yeah, like I wasn't expecting something so like pixel punk, but that like that sounds like music I would have gotten for free on like Newgrounds back when I was like doing Minecraft videos 12 years ago. I really like that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And this last one is more of a fun one. It's kind of their take on like elevator music. It's called Can You Bossa? Like bossa nova beat.
Mm.
So that one's
That's
fun.
very fun.
Yeah, just because like so you have a game that is like very visually one style, very thematically one style. You know, even like though there are very very different musical tonations through Homecoming or High Priority Retro, they're both of the same era. They're aping different parts of the same time period. And then you just have also for a game where like you're trying to kill to keep going, and then you just hit this like elevator. It's just like da 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 da. It's just that's a very fun moment, and it's that showcases the kind of sense of humor that the game has for sure.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to listen to that whole soundtrack.
There's some good stuff on there for sure.
All right, next on the list is Neva. This is more in the, you know, Austin Wintory style of let's heighten some emotional moments in this game where no one says anything. This music is by Berlinist, who also did the music for Grease, which I learned was pronounced Grease when I was looking up how to actually pronounce Neva. I thought it was Gris, and they specifically were like, no, it's Grease, like saying the word Grease. But yeah, I think they did a really phenomenal job matching the emotional tone and moments that you're experiencing in the game. And it's one of those where like, without the music, this shit would not hit the way that it does. This first track is called Altrove. I believe that's how you would pronounce it. It's from the very beginning of the game when you're just sort of like hanging out, vibing with your big wolf friend and her little pup, Neva.
All right, so a little different than Mullet MadJack.
Yeah,
a little bit of whiplash.
Yeah, it has that like pleasant sadness, which is such a weird thing, but I feel like very specific. But yeah, that's kind of the tone of a lot of this game, is that pleasant sadness, and that's kind of what that track makes me think of. The next one is Where Courage Abide. So this is from, I talked about this a little bit in Best Moment in last episode. This is from the beginning of the game where you're sort of having your first big fight against the blight that's attacking nature and the world. This is during a cutscene, and sort of as this is happening, you're winning, losing. The tides are shifting very quickly against this like seemingly impossible foe. Very dramatic. Very much a bummer because your friend dies at the end of it. Right in the beginning of the game. Hooray. Love these moments. But yeah, this is Where Courage Abide.
Oh, that's a really pretty one.
Yeah, in my original intent, it was longer than 30 seconds, and that's my bad on the editing part of it. Like, it continues to build and swell, and then kind of has that same melody, the da 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 da, but it has all the strings behind it, and it's just very dramatic and like really over the top. It's fucking incredible. Yeah, very, very powerful stuff. Next one is Seed of the Dark Giant. This is from fairly late in the game. This is more ambient music that's happening as you're exploring and doing a lot of the puzzles and platforms, etc. But this is sort of when you're getting close to the big culmination, so you're deep in enemy territory. It's very like dark, and I mean that literally. Like, there are many sections of the late game where you can't really see anything. You have to use sort of Neva's power to light your way, and so this kind of creates that sense of foreboding that you know is about to become the final confrontation.
really was not expecting like the electronic instruments to come in there.
Yeah, and that's like super my vibe. So having that come in, it creates, just like it does in Mullet MadJack, it creates that sense of like driving forward and momentum and sort of urgency. So I think that it's really effective for that reason. Last one from Neva, I could very easily be like, let's listen to the whole 2-hour soundtrack. But yeah, the last one is so long. This is the very end of the game. This is like what follows the moment that I talked about in Best Moment at the end, where you are recreating the battle from the very beginning of the game. You think things are going to end the same way, with Neva now dying and to try to protect you and Neva's daughter. But Neva's daughter comes in, helps save the day, and you actually vanquish the evil queen. And so this has a little bit, again, that like pleasant sadness to it with some of the choral notes. Yeah, man. The like breathy female voice there, really, it like, yeah, that shit hits for me.
There was a moment right before the vocals came in where like there was like this string swell. It reminded me of the intro to Kingdom Hearts.
Oh shit, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I'm into that. But yeah, Neva, I think, like I said at the top, I think the music really makes a lot of the emotional stuff work because there's essentially no dialogue in the game.
Right.
And it's a pretty short experience that spans essentially like a year in the lives of the characters. And so they kind of have to showcase a lot through these small vignettes and while you're playing, and the music is a big part of that. I also think, one of my favorite games of all time that just came out a couple of years ago, Spiritfarer, this music hits me in a lot of the same ways as that, in creating that pleasant sadness feeling. It's like watching a movie that just makes you like cry, and that emotional release that you hold on to, because we all hold on to that shit all day long.
Right.
All of the like horrible things that we experience in the negativity in our lives, and just like having an excuse to let it go and release that. And a lot of Neva is really like, it recreated a lot of that feeling for me in music. And I, am a huge music lover. And so it's very special to me in a way that very few soundtracks are. Much more subdued than a lot of the stuff that we kind of call out in a place like this. Certainly something that works way better in the context of a game than listening to it by itself.
Yeah, of course.
Can't recommend the game enough, and I think the music is a huge reason why. So, love it.
Yeah, the music's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, next up is Rise of the Golden Idol. This is a strange one. The music is very weird, but I think it works. Like, if you look at art, if people don't know what Case of the Golden Idol, Rise of the Golden Idol are, look at their art. There's nothing else quite like it. It has a very unique style, and I think the music has that in common. It simultaneously, it's trying to accomplish a lot of things. Like, it's trying to establish a tempo. It's trying to establish mystery, mystique. There are also like themes of love and betrayal, and there are a lot of things that the music has to get across, and I think they do that by blending a lot of existing styles and also kind of twisting things into something new. And so the first one was just the main theme when you boot up the game. So this is what you experience before even starting it.
Yeah.
Really interesting, right?
I really like the end of that one.
Yeah.
It feels very like a mystery, detective sort of on the case. like uncovering the first clue. Yeah, I think it's very evocative of the kind of game that it is.
Yeah, and I think so. The first, the case of the Golden Idol, some of the soundtrack was very like that droning sound that this starts out as, and I like that it kind of builds and then it kind of becomes something different entirely, and it's just like sort of a signal for the player to understand that, hey, this is familiar, but it's something new too. I think the music gets that across, so I like that. The second track is called Auctioneering Part 2. This is a really interesting level where there is a murder at an auction, and you're trying to deduce who all the different parties are that are present based upon the artifacts that are being bid on, and there are some other mysteries at play too. But this is Auctioneering Part 2. See what I mean about how it's all these different styles they're trying to pull in to evoke all these different feelings and emotions. It's like it's cacophonous at first, and then there is this sort of resolve into something more cohesive that is also very nebulous still in terms of like what it's drawing inspiration from. It is very unique and weird.
Yeah, there's like an underlying eeriness.
Yeah.
But like in the middle, I don't know if it's like a pan flute or whatever instrument they're using in that middle part to create that little like, again, sort of like Western kind of melody. And then they bring it back in a way with the vocalization of like a similar melody, but it gives it a totally different kind of tone. Very cool. Very odd in a cool way.
Yeah. This last one that I'm going to play from Res the Golden Idol is called Yester Yearning. I'm not going to set it up because I don't remember, but I'll talk about it after I listen and remember. Okay, now I remember why I included it, because it fucking slaps.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I like that one a lot because it's like it's like Blade Runner if it was made in the 70s instead of the 80s.
Yeah, it sort of has like an 80s aesthetic to it with more of like a 70s big band backing. It's like 70s big band with 80s electronica kind of combined together.
Right.
Very cool. Very hip.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very hip. Man, that game is very good. And the music is just one piece that makes it terrific.
I like how different all those tracks feel.
Yes.
Like they feel cohesive, but super different styles.
Yeah, they're all like, because they're using a few of the same instruments throughout, but like surrounding them. And they're not like the main instruments that they're using either, but so they're kind of tertiary, secondary instruments that are the same. And they all in some way transform. Like towards the end there, we didn't get to hear it because of the 30-second, but it dissolves into more of a droning thing again, more of a mood piece. And they do that a lot within their scenes where it'll have one vibe and then sort of it becomes some other feeling or emotion, and that's supposed to mirror how the player is slowly discovering things in the scene and coming to conclusions that change the context of the scene for them. And so I found that the music often mirrors the sort of flow of discovery that the player has.
Nice.
This next one is I have two samples of music from Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. These are the whole game soundtrack is very similar. It's this sort of like throat singing, droning, very heavy, occasionally percussive, but often mostly choral Viking music performed by High Lung, which is a group that I think is really, really fucking awesome. They do some cool shit. So I'm just going to play a couple samples of the music from Hellblade 2. Oh man, that dude's throat singing is so good.
Yeah, very evocative.
Yeah. And
creepy.
Yes, very creepy is what I would categorize their music as. One more sample that's slightly different, but also kind of the same, and it's just cool. I like listening to it, so you're all going to listen to it with me. So I mean that it's very similar to the first track, but I like at the end how it becomes like this sort of high pitched wailing and sort of kind of it raises itself up out of the depths of the throat singing, which is very much emblematic of Senua's journey, how she's coming in and out of these dark spots of her psyche, talking to herself. So I just thought that was very, very cool. Kind of mirrors. It's cool when the soundtrack mirrors what's happening in the game.
Oh, sure. I mean, and even at a top level, I think both tracks, they're very evocative of the Viking stuff, the darkness, the mysticism. I think, it's partially the throat singing, but it's also the drums and sort of the beat behind everything. It feels like it establishes a really good sense of place for what's happening.
Right. Yeah, for sure. All right. And our last game to talk about the soundtrack for is Star Wars Outlaws. A game with not without its problems, right? But I do think the Star Wars music in this is pretty good. It's at least up there with all of with some of the better EU Star Wars music stuff that's going on at the Disney movies and shows and stuff. So I think it's at least as good as that stuff. So here's the main theme from Star Wars Outlaws. Pretty good, right?
Yeah, I think, didn't mention this during the Indiana Jones stuff, but it had a very John Williams feel to it, even though it wasn't done by John Williams.
Right.
Similarly, I would say the build into that one felt very John Williams-esque.
Yeah.
It felt authentic to Star Wars. Yeah. Obviously, the main theme with the violins has a distinct feel that I think matches the more seedy underbelly kind of style, adventure-y kind of style, but the build up into the theme I really liked, and I was like, oh yeah, this sounds like John Williams' stuff.
Yeah, totally. I think it does that. It's hey, it's here, it's Star Wars, we know that's what you want, but also we're also our own thing. We're carving out our own kind of corner of this thing, which I think is good. So next track from Star Wars Outlaws is the Canto Bight Workers District. So this is, one of the areas that you spend quite a bit of time in the game, kind of walking around and running around doing quests, chatting with people. Yeah.
Ooh, I like the little hit at the end.
Yeah.
The do. Like it felt was a little more like the electronic kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like I want to hear a little more of that style, because the beginning part of it I like. It's got the like Star Wars flutes, the like the quick hit kind of thing. But I like, to your point on the main theme, how it once it gets into the main melody, it feels kind of distinct. I want to have a little more of the distinctness in Star Wars Outlaws too. So I liked where that was going at the end of that track.
Right, and that's exactly what it does after that. Is it becomes its own thing, and like it's a good where Star Wars Outlaws is at its best is when you're walking around in the cities, being immersed in a Star Wars place, and having a backing track like that really helps you feel like you're there. All right, the last track I want to play is Going Into Orbit. So this is what plays whenever you leave a planet and go into orbit, and it fucking rocks.
That was good shit.
Yeah, dude.
That's some Star Wars shit right there, baby.
That's Star Wars. They did a Star Wars.
It's a bummer that it only plays like during a cutscene into a loading screen, into a cutscene, into a loading screen when you go into space. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about Starfield. No.
It kind of the same thing.
But you can fly into space, can't you? Can't you transition?
No. It's you take off from where your ship is parked, and it does the animation, and then you take over when you hit space. It's just the Starfield thing.
I take back my compliment, Ubisoft. You fucked it up.
Yeah. The best part about that is the music. Because it's the big bombastic thing, flying through the clouds, like seeing the city disappear behind you, going off to your next adventure, and then you hit space, and it's the kind of like the playful little, slightly less playful, slightly more sinister little notes of like seeing the speckled stars in front of you in the blackness of space. That's that good shit. Hey, that's a lot of music.
That is a lot of music.
What is the best music in your opinion?
That is very tough. I think there is so much really good stuff. Astrobot, Helldivers, Neva. Those would probably be my like 3 favorites. I think in terms of like variety and standing on its own, I'm going to give the nod to Astrobot as having my favorite music.
Okay. I think that's definitely a worthy one. I think they do a terrific job. Well, obviously, we just talked about how good all of these soundtracks are. I have a special place in my heart for that Harold Halibut soundtrack. It's just
very unique.
Yeah, it's its own thing, and I really, really appreciate that. And it's very consistent about it throughout. And it was definitely a big reason why I kept pushing through it. Not just because I wanted to like continue to see all the puppetry that they were doing and all like the claymation stuff, but like the music was definitely, it was resonating with me really strongly, and that was a big motivator for me to keep going through it. So nice. I just think it was really, really good. Obviously, like I said, all the stuff on this list, terrific.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move forward to our final category for the day. Perhaps our most important category that we've ever done of all time.
Yep.
Worst character.
Ugh.
These are the men, women, and sometimes aliens or non-human characters that we just couldn't fucking stand.
Oh, man.
Many of these are in games that we liked, but some of them are in games that we didn't like. And sometimes we didn't like that game in large part because of these characters. I'll start us off. 2 characters from Call of Duty Black Ops 6. First being Felix. So I called out Sev in the best characters category as being sort of the only character that felt definably cool. You know, Woods is fine. Everybody likes Woods.
Yeah.
But Sev was like a new and unique character in that game. Felix is also a new and unique character in this game. He's fucking annoying. He's just a cliche of the like Eastern European creep
Yeah.
And I never talked to him, because in between missions you can talk to sort of everybody, get updates. You can chit chat and like, you know, shoot the breeze with them sometimes too. And I just avoided talking to Felix whenever I could, because he just weirded me out. And he was just like odd for the sake of being odd. And that kind of character always annoys me in fiction.
Yeah. I think I agree with you on that one. Well, frankly, I never spent the time to talk with anybody when it was an option. I just played the game because it's a Call of Duty game. But
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, he was definitely... he was probably my least favorite of the Blop 6 characters.
I also wanted to call out Harrow, who's sort of the big bad traitor that, you know, you kind of see coming from a mile away, because you know it's going to be a character that you've been introduced to. Of course. And Harrow's the only character you've been introduced to that isn't part of your team, your direct team that you interface with. And I just think that her motivations are really lame.
I agree.
I think that sort of the culmination at the end where they make you play as her, like in her mind, trying to unlock these hidden memories to stop the whatever fucking nuke shit that they're always going off on. I just found her to be very annoying and trite and just like super two-dimensional. And it made it extra annoying to spend all of this time with this character's mind, like literally being in her mind, when there's just like no depth to anything that's happening. And like, oh no, my parents were murdered and they told me it was from the CIA and that's why I hate the CIA now. It's just like, all right, I get it. Yeah. I don't need to spend 2 hours getting it even more.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
2 characters from Concord, the best game of the year. There are many characters that you could nominate purely on their design, but I'm going to nominate 2 characters that combine bad design with really lame characterization. The first is, I don't know if you say it's or Itz. It's like IT-Z. She is sort of a Nightcrawler style character. She can, teleport a little bit. She shoots out these like big purple balls that she can teleport into. And she just has that like manic energy that I find very off-putting. Also her design, she's got like alien ears and really stupid like teal coloration to her with purple hair. And she's just fucking annoying, is the biggest thing. And then Lennox is sort of the titular, not literally, but like the character everyone thinks of when they think of Concord. He was in the character reveal trailer. He's the knockoff Star-Lord who has like the green reptilian skin. He's a gunslinger. And just his attitude is lame. He's like trying to be sarcastic, cool Devil May Care guy, but it just comes across extremely forced. And yeah, I just think he's really lame. And I think those 2 characters are good amalgamations of what made the characterization not work in Concord, which is unlikable characters who are extremely tropey, which makes them more unlikable.
Right.
What a great setup for characters in a hero shooter at your video game.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, moving on to Dragon Age Veilguard. We each have one from Dragon Age Veilguard. I'm going to call out Bellara. I did not get very far into Dragon Age Veilguard, so it's totally possible I would hate any and or all of the other characters as much, if not more, than Bellara. But she's the first... I guess she's not the first. Neve is the first, who I actually did kind of like. But Bellara, again, she fits that trope of like, I'm the wacky nerdy girl.
Right.
I'm really bright and cheery all the time. And it's just annoying. Just that kind of personality, I'm so sorry, is just really annoying.
If you're the bright, nerdy, relentlessly cheerful girl, stop.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Because most people probably find you annoying. It's such a trope in fiction because they like it's, and a lot of it, not to dive too deeply into this, a lot of this is like based in the patriarchy where they need to make the intelligent female character super disarming in other ways so that she isn't intimidating and scary to all of the really insecure boys watching the movie. And it feels like Bellara is sort of a remnant of that trope. in that she is extremely smart. She knows all the fucking history of all the Elvish shit. She's like a historian and an archaeologist and all this good stuff for the elves, but she won't shut up ever and never has anything super interesting to say. And when she does, she rambles on and on and on. And I'm looking in a mirror right now as I say that. But yeah, Balara is annoying.
Sure. I nominated Davrin from Veilguard because he's just nothing. Davrin is nothing. He has zero personality. He delivers like he's made out of a solid block of fucking wood. He's so boring, they had to give him the griffin to make him interesting. They had to give him the animal to give him something endearing.
Yeah.
Davrin is nothing. He's a shit. What are the guys who fight the blight?
Grey Warden.
He's a Grey Warden. Yes, he works with the wardens, and he has zero personality. So, but
I did not get far enough to meet Davrin.
He's black at least.
Okay.
So but
Balara's
it's
Asian,
not meaningful.
kind of, because she's an elf. I guess Davrin's an elf.
Davrin's, yeah. So like they made the people with different skin colors. They made them elves also.
It's a double minority.
Right.
We're checking all the boxes.
Yeah. Dude, don't get me started on Veilguard being a game about checking boxes. Yeah, just not great. All right, this next one. I don't...
The inspiration for this category.
The reason we have this category. I hesitate to invoke his name for fear that he may appear before me. It's Chadley from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Chadley.
Fucking Chadley, man.
Get fucked. Go listen to Games That Suck 2024 to hear us rant just a little bit about Chadley, and for us to get the inspiration for this category on that podcast as we talked about Chadley.
Yeah. Holy shit.
Yeah, dude. He's annoying. He never leaves you alone. He's a dork, and not in an endearing way. He's a know-it-all. He's the worst. He's the worst.
And they give him like a sister to... It's like trying to give Davrin a griffin. They give him a sister to try and endear you to him. And the sister's like, oh, that Chadley, he's a real handful, huh? It's like, yeah.
I'll give him a handful.
Take him out of the game.
Of my fist.
He is a handful. Why is he here? If there was another category that was most go away, Chadley would also win that category.
I believe I described Chadley on that podcast as puckering up his lips to extract the most gas he can from an ass. That's how much ass he sucks.
Yeah. Yep. Oh. All right. Well, you put this next one on here, I think.
Oh, I think you're right. I was wondering if you put this next one on here. I do think it is true. I put Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. It's more just because Cloud is a brooding... He's a brooding douchebag followed around by his harem of hot women that he just can't stand for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I think that he, people like to say that he's one of the last great protagonists of a Final Fantasy game, and I say phooey on that.
Yeah.
I think Cloud is cringe, and not in the fun way like Tidus.
Right.
I think he's super douchey. It's fine, right? It works for the story. He's the stoic, sort of silent protagonist that you view the world through. It works, but that doesn't mean that I need to like him.
Right, for sure. All right, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. There's a character called Aran, who is Sunan's nephew from the third large open area that you go to. And he is a character you meet on a side mission. I believe that's it. Like, Aran says, hey, my nephew's missing. Can you go find him? I haven't heard from him in a while. Aran is basically an adult short round, and I found him to be both annoying and extremely offensive. In an area where a lot of the people from that culture are painted as like very respectfully and what feels like accurately, not like a not like a heightened version of their culture from cinema. It feels like very authentic portrayal of their culture, and I appreciated that. They're fully dimensional characters, and I appreciated that. And then there's this fucking guy, Iran, who is just so annoying and one-dimensional. And I frankly, like, he speaks like Short Round with the same affectations, and I find it to be offensive.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. He's not in the game much.
No.
I just played the quest where you find him today, and I saw that Kyle had added him to this list. And I was like, wait, does he come back in a bigger way? Kyle's like, no, that's just how much I hated him. So he's not in the game a ton, but I definitely agree that he is for sure annoying. And even if it's done like intended as a throwback to this style of character, that doesn't make it any more likable or necessary.
Right, for sure. Silent Hill 2, Laura. Laura. She's this little blonde girl that runs around Silent Hill seemingly invincibly and just fucks you over constantly. Like, she's just like nya kind of bullshit. Like making you chase her into a room and then locking the door behind her, and then, hey, it's Pyramid Head. Surprise, have fun with that, idiot. Like stealing your keys and throwing them out a window. Like, just bullshit all the time. Laura sucks. I hate Laura. And all children because of Laura. No, I'm kidding. But I do really dislike Laura as a character and as like a narrative vehicle to carry the story forward. It's like, I hate Laura. She's the Chadley of Silent Hill 2.
No, absolutely not. There is no Chadley other than Chadley.
There can be only one.
Last ones on here quickly from Stellar Blade. I put Adam. He is like Cloud, but not the main character, and so he doesn't get away with it. He's so fucking boring. The voice acting is terrible. English voice acting, at least. He's just a huge simp for Eve. Also, their names are Adam and Eve. Her.
Dude, I think we're all huge simps for Eve. You know what I mean?
He is an exceptionally boring, swagless character. No aura, zero riz.
Get him.
Yeah, he's an exceptionally boring character in an exceptionally boring game, at least in terms of tone. So yeah, he sucks. And then from the First Descendant, Bunny. I mean, you could list like any fucking character from First Descendant. They're all stupid characters. They're just dumb hot.
Yeah.
Bunny, I think, is like the worst example of this, of just being the biggest like gooner bait you can imagine. She's wearing like a leather metallic bunny suit the entire time, like with her cleavage out. It's wild. She again has that manic pixie kind of over the top, crazy, wacky personality. I'm just so quirky, like all these fucking lame anime characters are. Yeah, I hate that shit. And this list is really proof of that, because like half the characters I wrote are like annoying, quirky girl. Like, that's not a fun character. How about you make interesting quirky girl or likable quirky girl? Why do you intentionally make them annoying? Like, why are dudes into that? I do not understand. Just shut up and stop talking and let me shoot bad guys. And then last on the list is Ellie from The Last of Us Part 2. The remake came out. Their HD remake came out in 2024. We didn't get to talk about Ellie in the 2020 because we weren't doing the podcast. I just really hate what they did with Ellie, but we're not going to talk about it because Kyle and I have talked about it ad nauseum. I just have to talk about, or I have to mention it, because I really, really hated what they did with her character in that game. The end. There, see, Kyle, I told you I wasn't going to try to do it to rile you up.
Thank you.
I'm a good person. So who's the worst character?
Gee, I wonder.
Do I even need to ask? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Chadley.
Always in our hearts. Go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself, Chadley. Oh, man. Hey, we did it.
And that's it. Yeah.
My voice is gone.
Oh, me too. I started this podcast with a little bit of congestion, and now I can no longer breathe. So we're all good. We're doing great.
Yeah. Super healthy.
But yeah, those are our favorite old games we played in 2024, our favorite writing, our favorite music, and our least favorite characters, fuck you, Chadley, of any game that came out in 2024. Yeah. What are your thoughts, audience, listeners? What are your, favorite writing in games this year? What's your favorite music? What characters did you fucking hate? And did you play anything old? Send us an email to info@SheaHatesEverything.com. We would love to hear from you. We'll chat about it on the main podcast, which will come out on the first Monday in February. Look forward to our next episode, which is coming out in just a short few days. Episode 3 of our 2024 Superlatives. We are going to be talking biggest, best? I don't know why it says biggest. Did we talk about biggest versus best? The biggest / best surprise. Yeah. Whatever we end up calling that. I don't know why it says biggest.
I don't know either.
But the best surprise games of 2024. We're going to talk about our favorite Astrobots, which will be a very fun one. The best delayed game, which is like a little bit of like a most anticipated, but like a game that was supposed to come out this year that no longer is.
Right.
What's the best one of those? And then wrapping it up with best style, stolen directly from the Giant Bomb Game of the Year podcasts of old. These are the games that combine visuals, music, aesthetic, character design, art direction, graphics, all into a unique je ne sais quoi of style.
Yeah.
What are the best ones of 2024 there?
Now people
stay tuned for that.
Now people know when I mentioned, hey, this game would be great for a best style category. Look forward to that.
Yeah, I didn't want to rat you out. Yeah, you're like, oh, if we had a best style category. Guess what? We do.
I know.
We had already planned it.
I know.
And Harold Halibut is on the list.
I know. Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, thanks everybody so much for listening. Please go check out episode 1 if you have not. Please go check out games that suck from 2024 if you have not. Please check out the 3rd episode in a couple of days. And then check out games that don't suck 2024 a few days after that, which will be our combined collaborative top 5, which is always a knockdown, drag out fight to decide and come up with like, do we honor games that we both played? Do we honor the games that were our favorites but the other person didn't play? So it's going to be an anxiety nightmare, and y'all should check that out. So Thank you all for listening. We'll see you back in a couple of days. Peace out.